Pub and Grub in the Vineyard. So if you're looking for a place to do a little pregame action prior to the trip down to Provo, head on over, say what's up to Porter and Trev, and enjoy pregame meal, and then make the trek down to Provo, where a classic game, I think, will manifest itself down at LaVell Edwards Stadium starting at 6 o'clock Mountain Time tomorrow. Of course, that will be the bulk of our programming today. It's been the bulk of our programming all week. The line actually moved yesterday during our show, and then overnight it moved back to where it was. Every single sports book, and I have 7 of them in front of me, they have Utah favored by 3.5 points. So that is where we're at as of now. The Utes are a slight favorite in what is expected to be potentially the most viewed game in the 103-year history of Utah BYU football. We'll get you ready for it today. We will cover it today. We'll preview it today. We'll try to attack it from every angle. Most of these storylines have been already discussed and rehashed 75 different ways by all of us in the media. So not a lot of new action to offer you, but we'll go over some of the angles and some of the more fascinating storylines, and there are a lot of them. This is compelling stuff. It'll be compelling stuff if you're there. Live in person down in Provo. Night games at LaVell Edwards Stadium are electric. BYU is very good at night. When they play night games in Provo, their record is very, very good. The one thing I would be stunned about as far as the dynamic of this game is if one team pulled away from the other. I feel like it's going to be a battle. I feel like it's going to be close, and it's probably going to come down to something crazy at the end. So compelling stuff if you're in person, compelling stuff if you're watching on television. College football rivalries among the best TV shows in all of sports. So juice for this one. It's been a fun week, and we have a fun Friday show planned for you here on the program. Now, we're live and out and about with our friends out here at the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event. These vehicles are really, really cool. Tanner called them off-road G-Wagons, and that's kind of what they look like. If you've ever seen a G-Wagon before, they're like souped up and made for like off-roading. But it's not just for off-roading. You can drive them in your regular existence in life as well. Here's the address. It's 5544 West, 2400 South. It's easy to find. Just put it in your GPS, 5544 West, 2400 South. We're going to go until 6 o'clock tonight. I would recommend looking at the website, which is WarnerIneosGrenadier.com. And if you're in the market for a new vehicle, you're not going to want to miss this test drive event, okay? So we'll go until 6 o'clock tonight. They're going to open up tomorrow at 10 a.m. and go until 3. They're phenomenal vehicles. They're built for more capability. They're more durable, more reliable, and they're designed for both on- and off-roading, award-winning. So come on out and say what's up. It's the ultimate 4x4 designed for the 21st century. And I would recommend just taking one for a test drive. They gave me a little tour prior to the start of the show, and they're really, really cool cars. And obviously a lot more affordable. That's kind of the deal here. And if you stop by today, you get up to $2,000 off and $2,000 free accessories with purchase of any new vehicle, both today and tomorrow. They're going to have a taco truck. They got hot dogs. They're giving free T-shirts and hats away with every test drive. So come on out and say what's up. It's a really, really cool spot. 5544 West, 2400 South, with our good friends at Warner Ineos Grenadier. Going until 6 o'clock tonight, and then opening up at 10 tomorrow and going until 3 o'clock for their Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event on this Friday afternoon. Week 7 of pro football got going last night with a surprisingly entertaining game with 2 geriatric quarterbacks just slinging it. Joe Flacco looked awesome. Jamar Chase showed why he's potentially the best wide receiver in the NFL. But Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers punched back quite a bit. It was a fun game. The Bengals won it 33-31. Steelers fall to 4-2. Local boy Jalen Warren had a really good game. The Bengals improved to 3-4. So Week 7 of the NFL got going last night with a full slate ahead. But, of course, college football, top of mind awareness. BYU, Utah, the main topic both today and all week long. But a big slate of Big 12 games and a big slate of national college football games as well to break down on the program today. Again, our pregame coverage for Utah BYU as your home of the Utes will begin at 1 o'clock tomorrow with Porter Larson, Trevor Riley, live at Bout Time Pub and Grub over there in the Vineyard. So definitely stop by and say what's up to them. Then Bill, Riley, Stevenson, Sylvester, Scott Mitchell on the call for the 103rd edition of the Holy War featuring Utah and BYU. All right, good guest list today to get you ready for the game tomorrow, which will be the main thing we discuss. There are certainly other things going on. We actually saw a high-level preseason basketball game last night between the Blazers and the Jazz. It was actually some fun basketball. A lot of the big-time starters played, and the Jazz got a win at the Delta Center. Jazz will start things off officially coming up next week against the Clippers at home. And NBA basketball is right around the corner. Compelling stuff in St. Louis. While most of us will be watching the Utah-BYU game, one eye on RSL, our local soccer team, to see if they can qualify for the play-in MLS tournament at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. Win and you're in. Tie, you need a few different things going your way. So we got a little RSL, we got a little Jazz. The Mammoth are back in action tonight at home against San Jose, so a little local hockey as well. But the main topic, of course, today will be Utah-BYU. Our first guest, one of the best to ever do it in the state, period. Future NFL Hall of Famer, College Football Hall of Famer, Utah Hall of Famer, Eric Weddle will bat leadoff today on the program. He'll be our first guest. Roxy Bernstein, who's in town to call the Mammoth game, will stop by. Of course, Roxy is our friend from the Pac-12 days. We'll talk some Utah-BYU with Roxy, and we'll touch on the Mammoth game as well. Our good friend Roxy Bernstein stops by. Sam Bruckhouse, his weekly visit. We'll talk football with Sam, really bright football mind. And then, good guest today, good get by Porter, Spencer Hall, potentially my favorite college football guest, who I believe has experienced the Holy War. Spencer was live in studio a couple years back when Florida was in town. Sorry, we're having some mic issues here. I'm doing my best to keep this close to my mouth. But Spencer Hall will stop by. At 4 o'clock. We'll do a little golf today with Paul Pugmire. The PGA Tour is about to come into our state down at the Black Desert Championship at the Black Desert Resort down there in close to St. George, Utah. So we'll bring in Pugs today, and then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show. And we will say goodnight at 6, just in time for the Brewers and the Dodgers. The Dodgers looking for the sweep to go back to the World Series. They're the best team in Major League Baseball on paper. The ALCS much more compelling as that series is tied at 2. First pitch from T-Mobile Park in Seattle will be at 4:08 on FS1, and then we'll have the Brewers and the Dodgers game for you. All right, Eric Weddle, Roxy Bernstein, Sam Bruckhouse, Spencer Hall, Paul Pugmire, me, Spence Checketts, out here live with our good friends at Ineos Grenadier. Come on by and say hello. It's their test drive event today at 5544 West, 2400 South. Best thing to do is to put that address in your GPS, follow it out. The cars are right out in front. We're in the garage, so come on out and say what's up. Free hats, free T-shirts. And if you're in the market for a new vehicle, don't look anywhere else. Come on out to this Global Ineos Grenadier test drive event that goes until 6 o'clock tonight, and then they open up tomorrow at 10 a.m. and go until 3 p.m. The website is WarnerIneosGrenadier.com. Back in the Broadway Media Studios, on the eve of the Holy War is where we find the producer of this program and the host of Ute pregame show tomorrow at 1 o'clock, Porter Larson, Friday afternoon, Christmas Eve, buddy. Are you pumped? How you feeling today?
What up? Stoked, Spencer. Listen, as a football fan above almost anything else, right? Any sort of allegiance to team or program or institution, I am a football fan above any of that, right? I will watch any sort of random football game, and when you boil it all down, the best part to me about football is usually rivalries. It's usually, an NFC East team. It's usually a regional rivalry in college football. Doesn't matter what level of football. The best thing about it are championship games and rivalries. And this, Spence, might be my favorite rivalry of them all. So I'm absolutely stoked for it. Result aside, always one of my favorite matchups of the year, and always special when we get it. Glad that we're getting it very consistently, and of course, as a conference matchup, a lot of stakes tomorrow, which just makes it more exciting.
Yes, indeed, and we'll go over every dynamic of this game, and we'll get you ready. We'll give you a good preview before we say goodnight. We will give you our picks, and Eric Weddle will bat leadoff on this Friday afternoon. Happy Friday to you, but before EWED stops by, courtesy of our good friends, and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of the drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
You guys already know by now Prize Picks is the best spot to win money on the football season when it comes to the Broncos, the Raiders, the Niners, whatever your favorite football team is. But pro basketball is on the way. Prize Picks is also the best place to win money on the Jazz or the Lakers or the Knicks or whoever your favorite team is. And the first thing you should do is download the Prize Picks app today and then use that promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. It is good to be right. Their max discount to celebrate the return of pro basketball is Steph Curry over or under, more or less 0.5 points. More or less 0.5 points. So that's your special max discount as the Warriors are going to play the Lakers on October the 21st. And my guess is Steph will score a point. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's free money for you. And, of course, there's a big-time slate of both college and pro football. So all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you can win up to 2,000 times your cash. And, of course, on Prize Picks, it's always good to be right. Appreciate Prize Picks. All right, it is here. Utah BYU. It is the day before the game we've all been waiting for and talking about not just this week, but for a long, long time now. The line is always interesting to follow because it indicates what the experts believe will happen, and they're very rarely wrong, which is why a new casino is built in Vegas every other week. And there's been very little movement. It vacillated a little bit yesterday during our show. It actually moved down to 3, and then overnight it moved back up to 3.5. So as we sit here today, on the day before the game, the line is where it started. The University of Utah is slight favorite, even though they're on the road, to take on BYU down at LaVell Edwards Stadium tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. A massive sellout crowd expected. Fox Big Noon kickoff in town. My understanding is a lot of Ute fans are making the trek down there to be a part of the Fox Big Noon kickoff. It's going to be fun just to see the signs. It's going to be fun to see the banter back and forth between the fan bases. I will make a plea for safety and decency. Cheer for your team and respect the other team. With a crowd like this and the undercurrent of some of the things that have happened both in the state and around the country, I'm just very hopeful that we'll have a very decent showing. Remember, the eyes of the nation will be on Utah. The eyes of the nation will be on Provo. The eyes of the nation will be on Ute fans and BYU fans. And my hope is we all show well. And my belief is we will have an unbelievably compelling and exciting football game. We'll give you our picks before we get out of here, coming up just right before 6 o'clock. And Porter and Trev will have you taken care of pregame tomorrow starting at 1 o'clock. The one thing that would certainly stun me is any sort of a blowout whatsoever. The only time that typically happens is if there is a massive talent gap, like a 2004 Utah talent gap, or a game where Max All throws 5 interceptions or Jake Heap suddenly is seeing ghosts. Those things don't happen very often. And with the line being what it is, and these two teams essentially being mirror images of each other, with very similar quarterbacks who play kind of the same way, two dynamic athletes under center that can get out and run and make plays, a rushing attack for Utah that features a 1-2 punch of Nakai Rogers and Wayshawn Parker, a rushing attack for BYU that features a bell cow and one of the best backs in the country, and L.J. Martin, a downhill one-cut runner that can make you miss and run over you. There's certain areas where one team has the edge over the other. BYU probably has better wideouts capable of taking the top off and making big plays. I would give Utah a clear advantage along the offensive line, even though BYU's offensive line, I think, has played a lot better than I expected, certainly. Utah's O-line, outside of the Tech game, has been elite, potentially the best offensive line, not just in the Big 12, but one of the best offensive lines in the country. And assuming full health, that's going to be the unit that I think will allow the University of Utah to continue to compete in this conference and hopefully beyond. Which brings me to a couple of dynamics that make this game pretty unique and pretty interesting. When it comes to some of the more compelling storylines, we've been lucky enough to have Coach Witt on the show this week. There are a lot of people that are more plugged in to the dynamic than I am, that are of the belief that this will be the last time that Kyle Whittingham coaches against BYU. What does that add to his approach? What does that add to the dynamic overall? I think it'll be interesting to keep an eye on. And this is, it sounds a little dramatic, But this is virtually an elimination game, honestly, for both teams when it comes to competing for the Big 12 championship. Now, BYU is undefeated, and they have not lost a conference game. So you might be saying, well, why is it an elimination game for BYU? Well, I don't think BYU is going to stay clean, even if they win tomorrow night. They're at Iowa State, which is always a tough place to play. They're going to be at Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the country. They get TCU at home, and TCU has not proven to be the team we thought they were going to be. But then they're on the road at Cincinnati, who's kind of surprised everybody before they finish the season at home against UCF. So BYU's schedule starting tomorrow is a bit of a bear. So they lose against Utah. My guess is they at least pick up one more loss. And then they lose the tiebreaker to Utah. And if both these teams finish with 2 losses, Utah with the head-to-head tiebreaker, that's why I feel like it is an elimination game, even though it would be the first loss for Brigham Young. And for Utah, it's simple. Your second loss is not necessarily a death nail, as we learned last year, but you lose another head-to-head tiebreaker after you've already lost one to Texas Tech. And then your margin of error moving forward is really, really slim. So there are several things about this that make it compelling. The first time since 2009, these two teams have been in the top 25. Fox Big Noon in town, a primetime kickoff slot, conference championship implications, a legend for the University of Utah, and Kyle Whittingham may be coaching his last game, and a night game at LaVell Edwards Stadium all make this just scintillating and very, very compelling to consider what could go down tomorrow night in what I think will be just an absolutely epic, epic matchup. All right, we are live today out on location, and we love to see you, love to meet you with our good friends at Ineos Grenadier. It is their test drive event at 5544 West, 2400 South. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, do not buy anything until you come out and see what they have to offer. They're like G-Wagons. They're like made for off-roading. It's really, really cool. They kind of rebuild them and redesign them for the 21st century. So it's good for off-roading if you go up in the mountains, but it's a good practical everyday vehicle as well. If you come in and take advantage of their test drive event, you get up to $2,000 in free accessories with the purchase of any new vehicle. They've got a taco truck out here. They've got hot dogs. They're giving away free T-shirts and free hats as well. So all I can say is come out and check it out, because if you see them and then if you take a test drive, I think you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. 5544 West, 2400 South. Put that address in your GPS, follow it out. It's about 10 minutes from downtown. So come on out and say what's up. We'll catch a quick break, and we'll bring in Eric Weddle coming up on the other side of a Friday edition of The Drive. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're live on location today. Put this address in your GPS and then just follow it out. We've switched mics, so hopefully it sounds a little bit better. Apologies for the difficulties to start. It's the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event at 5544 West, 2400 South. Check out the website, which is warnerineosgrenadier.com. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, I wouldn't buy anything until you come on out here and take a test drive. We're giving away hats and T-shirts, a bunch of cool giveaways. But it is Christmas Eve for college football fans. 6 o'clock tomorrow, Utah, BYU. Our pregame coverage begins at 1 o'clock. And our first guest on a Friday show, the legend himself, one of the best to ever do it, Eric Weddle. Happy Friday, Ewed. How we doing, buddy?
Doing fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks for having me on. It's always a joy to come on with you, and no better time to come on, talk some shop for Rivalry Week.
No doubt, no doubt. What is this week like for you? Even though you're removed from it as a player, and even though you've got your own stuff going on now that we'll get to, what is this week like for you? What sort of memories, emotions does it invoke?
It's interesting. It's not as I got so much going on, so I'm not. I watch every game of Utah. Obviously, I've watched a good amount of BYU. Honestly, just because they're on TV and with Gage and all that stuff going on. So you kind of tap into the teams and schools that are recruiting and want to see how they're doing and support the coaches that come through your school and that stuff. So. Emotionally, not nearly as crazy as it once was. I think I'm excited. I'm obviously been wearing red all week. We got a lot of BYU fans down here that I got to see. So I've been repping the U and letting them know who really runs the show around here. And so I'm excited for the game. I'm excited. Hopefully get a win tonight to start off the weekend, and then watch my youth go put a good game together and get a win.
I wonder, one of the things we've discussed, Eric, and I talked to Whit about this on Wednesday, and we talked to A-Rod about this too. Once upon a time, both of these schools, when you look up and down the roster, the players were very regional. And that's no longer the case. Both of the footprints, recruiting footprints, have spread all across the country. And so I wonder, as somebody who did come here from a different state, what your understanding was about what Utah BYU means and what you learned about it after you landed here and actually played in the game.
Yeah, I didn't know much about anything, if I'm being honest. I knew Utah and their Final Four moments that they had when I was in middle school. And that you have to learn about the rivalry as an outsider and learn how it affects the fans and the community in the school and what it meant to get a win during that season, right? It was win league and then it was beat your rival, and understanding that and the history behind it all of the runs, the runs of the 80s and early 90s, and then how it switched back to Utah mid-90s and until now, just kind of, how the dominance in Utah in the early days. So just seeing that and having older players come back and explain what the rivalry meant and educating the young guys like myself. And then it's on us to carry that on to the players now. So it's an amazing rivalry, especially for the people that live there and grow up in it. It's there's nothing like it, and how close the schools are, and how now the players are on both sides. They play Utah for a couple years, and they transfer over, and so it just brings a whole new element to it all, to the rivalry. So I'm excited to watch a really top-notch game against two really good programs, and nationally the attention will be on both schools, which is great for the state of Utah.
Were you 3-1 as a player against BYU, Eric? Do I have that right? Okay, there you go.
Baby.
There you go. That's what I thought. Do you have any specific memories of the 4 matchups you played in? Anything come to mind from the time when you played here?
Yeah. A few. True freshman year at Lavelle Edwards, and we beat them 3-0. stopped their scoring streak of scoring 1 point. You know, they had, I think it was like 20-something years. Had a pick and a forced fumble in that game in the snow, and Borson kicking the field goal. I mean, it was just one for the memories. Obviously, the Fiesta Bowl year, and we blew them out, and that team was just on another level, and everyone rushing the field. And then, honestly, my last memory is us losing, and what a crazy game that was. They were really a really good team that year, and I think they were, you know, they were obviously the better team, but us to go in and compete and fight and really had a chance to win that game and didn't go in our way was something that I'll always remember.
Wanted to ask you about 2004 because, as you know, this game is more or less always close. There are some exceptions, though, and sometimes one team is just better than the other. Sometimes one team just has more talent, and it felt like everybody knew you guys were going to blow their brakes off in 2004. Did you guys know it? Did you feel before the game like they don't have a shot against us?
You know, you never want to think like that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to put the cart before the horse. We knew we were pretty talented. We knew we had a good group. We knew we had a close, connected team. But you still have to go out and execute. You still have to go do it. I think there was a point in that game where it kind of just felt like we were rolling, and then it was going to happen. But you still have to go do it. So I never felt that way. I took that rivalry very seriously and respected our opponent. And, you know, there's just a few times, like you said, like very rarely does this rivalry ever get more than 2 scores. And I think the last couple times Utah's been on the right side of those blowout wins.
So the line opened, Ewed, as Utah a 3.5-point favorite, and it more or less has stayed there. Yesterday it moved one time towards BYU, where Utah for a couple of hours was a 3-point favorite, and then overnight it's moved back to the Utes favored by 3.5, even though it's on the road. Tell me why you think Utah is favored in this game.
Well, I think the history of true freshman quarterbacks going against a Utah defense doesn't bode well, and honestly, they're pretty even across the board when you look at it, the stats, the talent. I think we have an edge on our D-line compared to their D-line. I think both offenses want to run the football. They want to take their shots. I think we have the advantage at quarterback, and I think coaching's probably a wash. I think both staffs are incredible, great men, great coaches. So I think it really comes down to what people are thinking is we've played really well the last 2 weeks after Texas Tech. I think BYU the last couple weeks have won the games close, which is still a sign of a good team. Good teams find ways to win, and I think that builds chemistry. I think it builds the team with handling adversity and not giving up and those types of things. So I think it ultimately comes down to the quarterback and going against our defense. And I think if we get in a pass-happy game where he's got to throw 30 or more times, I don't think the game will be close. I think it's got to stay under 30. I mean, maybe even 25, if I'm being honest. They got to control the clock, run the football, hit the plays when you got them. But that's the only way that they can win this game is play great defense and run the football, and don't ask a Bear to do too much.
We've talked to a lot of former players this week, and I'm glad that you're kind of the player that's closing us out on a Friday. And I want to ask you a similar question I've asked them. Night games in Provo, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, what is it like? What's it like to be the opposing player? What's it like to play in front of those fans? How hostile does it get? And then how do you make sure you keep those emotions in check so you're the right amount of motivated, but not like the wrong amount of psycho so you make mental errors? What's this dynamic like coming up?
Man, I think both times it was midday and then went to night. I'm trying to think the 3-0 game and then my junior year. I'm not sure if I think it was like a 3 or 4 o'clock game. So I've never really experienced a true night game. I've seen what they've been doing the last couple of years, and I know it's one of the most electric environments the way they're all the crazy stuff, the lights and the environment. I mean, that place gets as loud as it gets across the country. So I put it like this for a lot of these guys. I want our guys just to go and they're not. I don't think they're at the age where they can handle their emotions. So the first series or two, just go and just let it out. Like, if you get a couple penalties, so what? Like, get it out, hit, run to the football, just go, right? And then after the first quarter, everything kind of settles down, and then it's just like a normal game at that point. But that first quarter is going to be crazy, and just don't try to deny those emotions and feelings and excitement. Just channel it, but just go and let it out, and then kind of settle yourself in from there.
So you're now on the coaching side of things. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, Kalani coached under Kyle for a decade. A-Rod was on the staff up here. And, there's so much cross-pollination. Jay Hill, the defense coordinator down there, of course, and all of these names. And Jason Beck played at BYU, Marky Atuwaya, and I could keep going. I mean, so how do you surprise the other staff when you're so familiar with each other and the way they want to play and the schemes they want to run? Like, how do you get an advantage?
Well, I think it comes down to doing the little things right. It always comes back to blocking, tackling, the fundamentals of football, catching, lining up right, no pre-snap penalties, having composure, letting the other team make the mistakes. Usually that's what happens when you get good on good. One team usually makes a mistake that loses the game. It's not always the team that wins the game. It's usually the team that loses the game. So when you have such crossover, like you said, it's you don't want to be too cute. You don't want to outsmart yourselves and trying to get too cute and trying to dial up these crazy plays because you want your boys to play fast at the end of the day. And you want to have a couple wrinkles. I'm not saying that, but be who you are. Let your boys play fast and confident, and let the chips fall where they fall. Like I feel like sometimes in these big games, coaches get in the way, and usually are the reason why they lose. And it's not usually the players; it's the coaches doing dumb things and calling dumb stuff and mismanagement and this and that. So I think in these type of games, let your players play free, trust your players. Involve your players, the ones that you trust and lean on, and let them ride it out.
We had Whit on the show on Wednesday, and I tried to ask him the question in a very roundabout way whether or not this will be the final time he coaches against BYU, and he was very gracious, and he actually kind of alluded to the potential of, he didn't say yes or no, and none of us know when he's going to be done, and we probably won't know until the offseason when, in his own words, he will do a complete comprehensive evaluation of where he's at. He said, I do not want to overstay my welcome. People that are more plugged into the dynamic, Eric, do believe this is his last game coaching against BYU. If it is, how do you think this week is for him? The type of preparation that goes into it. Is there an extra added layer with the potential of maybe this being it for him?
Knowing Coach Whit, he's going to stay with his routine. He's going to do what he always does and trust the process. So, and he's not – I don't think he's a guy that really wants the attention or wants this about him. He's always been and who I try to be as a coach, that it's always about the players, and you win because of good players. If you lose, it's because it's bad coaching, and it's always a good reminder that you got to pour into these kids, and it's about them. It's not about an individual or a coach. So I think he wants to win. Obviously, I think it's a very pivotal game for both schools to get back, to stay in the league chase and try to get in that playoff run. So I think all that stuff after the fact will unfold, and he's just going to try to do his best, I think, to help lead the team to a victory, not really worried about if it's his last or not.
Away from the dynamic of it potentially being his last game, just generally speaking, what makes this week different? And I asked him the same thing because I had used the adjective, man, this is such a fun week, and he interrupted me and he said, did you say fun? And I said, what's the wit adjective for this week? And he said, intense. So I know you referenced, the routine, and it's important to be process orientated, but you hear a lot of things about the way Kyle coaches this week, like juxtaposed to the way Bronco used to approach it, where Bronco was more of like a John Wooden, nameless, faceless type approach, where the Kyle approach seems to be we don't lose to them. What's this week like when you're preparing under Coach Witt?
Oh, for sure. This isn't like any other week. Like, let's not get it twisted. And I don't really like when coaches try to devalue your rivalry game, or saying, like, yes, your process and how you prepare and work, like that is true. But the emphasis in ownership of what this game entails and what this means is not the same. This loss for us is not the same if we lose to somebody else. Okay, so that needs to be talked about. That needs to be said and expressed, so everyone understands what we're getting ourselves into and what is expected. So then it doesn't come as a surprise of the emotions and what this game actually is for a lot of guys that haven't played in it. So intense, passionate, excited, detailed, all those words ratcheted up for this week because of who we're playing. I mean, that's just reality. If you're naive to say that you're not going to try to do more and study more and give it more, being who we're playing, because this is not the case.
Tell me what this week is like for Morgan. Because you hear, and he's a pretty intense dude no matter what, and you hear certain things about the way Morgan Scalley approaches this week, and I don't know how long it will be, Ewed, until he moves over one seat, but it is coming at some point. How does Morgan Scalley approach BYU Utah week?
I think with the same approach that he did as a player and has done every time playing them. I think he's a very, you guys see him on the sideline. He's got great demeanor. He's very composed on the sideline. During the week, it's the complete opposite. and that's why I love him, because on game days you want your players to be free and loose and concentrate on the game. During the week, there is a standard, and if that standard is not being met, then there are consequences for that. So there's no one that'll have his team ready better than him and play at a high level, and being able to shuffle those guys around with injuries on the back end and still be able to be a top tier defense has been outstanding. And listen, our standard is the standard. We've been one of the best defenses year in and year out for a decade plus, even back when I was playing. So that is what we are. That's who we are, and everyone knows that. We just got to go out and show it week in and week out.
I want to continue the coaching theme for a moment, because we had Dr. Hill in studio on Monday, and we talked a lot about the way Urban changed the approach to the rivalry game and how the fan bases kind of took the cues from Urban. Things like Team Down South, changing the language, changing the way Ute fans kind of, I would think, viewed themselves. Because I think what you guys did under Urban is you made Utah football cool. You didn't just win, you made it cool. And Urban, creates kind of the Muss atmosphere. And even though he was only here for a few years, Eric, as you know, he changed the course of Utah football. So much so, there are a lot of BYU fans that still view Urban Meyer as like public enemy number one because of how cool he made Utah football and how he changed the dynamic of the rivalry. Take us behind the scenes a little bit. How did Urban approach this week?
Man, he went out of it. I mean, he was a master motivator, team builder, inspirational. Like that was, I think, one of his gifts as a coach, to bring people along, bring people together for a common goal. And I mean, we had it everywhere in our facility. Team Down South, a timer to when we played them. If we said BYU, then we would get in trouble for it. So it was like a full-fledged mental change, and really believing it and understanding that this is what it's going to take, right? So I loved it. I mean, that's what makes the rivalry so good. As I'm older now, it's I don't really get into that type of stuff. I've grown up a little bit, not a lot. I'm still a kid at heart, but BYU is BYU. They're not the team down south. I've graduated from that name, but it's cool. And like you said, he did bring Utah football to make it cool and relevant, and definitely put us on the map.
It feels like since Kalani took over, it's been 10 years with Kalani down there now, and of course A-Rod is the play caller, Jay Hill is the defensive coordinator. It almost feels now, Eric, that these two programs are really, really similar. And I'm not just talking about the two teams this year, because there's a lot of similarities between the two teams, but it feels like the programs now are similar. And we had Kalani on last month, and I asked him about this, and he was very effusive with his praise for Kyle, of course, and learning under Kyle and playing under Lavelle, and basically said he has tried to build BYU up in the way that Lavelle had it when he was a player and the way that Kyle has built it up here. Do you see the similarities, not just in the two teams this year, but in the programs overall?
Yeah, I mean, you learn under your predecessors, and you take tidbits from them and then add your own little style to it, personality. But the core of who you are is who you learn under and who you spend the most time with. And you can see it, how they play football, how they try to connect with each other. I think BYU is a unique place, obviously, with the religious, the religious aspect to it with the LDS faith and how they pour that into their program and that side of it. And then coupling it with what you learn from your different stages of your coaching career. So I think it's awesome. I love the crossover. I love the dynamics of it all, the different layers, and truly, like, I do have love for a lot of those guys on both, obviously at Utah, but at BYU, because I was around them and I know the type of men they are and what they're trying to do. So I'm always pulling for guys that I have a intimate relationship with, that I know who they really are and who they're trying to be and trying to change these young men. It's truly very cool to see.
All right, before I set you loose, let's bottom line this. I know you're going to pick the Utes. I know you're going to cheer for the Utes, but Utah beats BYU tomorrow night, Ewed, if they do what?
Man, I think we win the turnover margin. I think if we run the football 150 yards or more, and honestly, I think that's it. There's not a lot of two very similar teams. I think talent-wise, very similar. I think it's going to come down to turnover margin, who can run the football, and who will make the least amount of mistakes at quarterback. And that will be the deciding factor, in my opinion.
Ewed, what are you up to tonight, dude? You have any plans?
Yeah, we got a game tonight.
I know you do. But are you allowed to be there?
We got Oceanside coming to town. Good matchup for us, tough team. So we're trying to keep the winning ways alive. And yeah, so I'm just in here in the office, getting my mind right. Got the call sheet all ready, and hopefully stay out of the way and let the boys play free tonight.
Before I set you loose, give us an update on your boy. I saw that Ohio State offered him. I mean, we're all very, very curious, Eric, about the path that this young man is taking. How's it going with him? And congratulations on Ohio State offering him.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's fun. He is a fun kid to coach, and even more proud of who he's trying to be every day as a teammate. And he works really hard, man. He works really hard, and all this he is getting is because of him and his teammates and what he does and how he works. So it's crazy. I'm just along for the ride and be a soundboard for him. It's his journey, and then try to give him sound opinions and thoughts. And it's a long ways to go, but it's really not. I mean, once June hits, he could start really talking to the coaches, and then it's gonna get real. So he's got a chance to be special. I believe that not just on the field, but he's a guy that will change the course of a program. I really believe that by who he is and what he can bring on and off the field. So I just hope he continues on that path, and we'll see where he goes.
Well, I am a father of a son, Eric, and I know what it's like. You must be really proud. Is he already better than you thought he would be? I mean, he's still so young, but is he already outshot your expectations? You must be really proud of him.
Yeah, I mean, I put it like this: like he's already surpassed me at any point in my high school career right now as a sophomore.
Wow.
He does things that I sit back and say, holy smokes, how did he do that? Or, I mean, you hit a point as a high school player, if you're a D1 type kid, I related to, like, you got to be the best player on the field, not just in that game, but like in the San Diego, like. And I felt like I hit that my senior year. Like, I felt like the game was slow. I felt like I was just, like, better than everybody else. When I watch him, he's at that point now, which is just crazy to kind of wrap your head around. And so we'll see how he continues to work and develop. But if I know him, which I do, it's only going to push him to be the best, and that's what you want.
Well, best of luck with that process, and thank you so much for your time, man. Great insight. Have a great weekend. Good luck tonight. Keep the winning ways rolling, okay?
You got it, buddy. Anytime. Thanks for having me on.
All right, the great Eric Weddle. He is coaching his son, and his son is scary good. Ohio State is the latest to offer him. And Eric's team is undefeated. My guess is at some point Eric will be a college coach and maybe beyond. Appreciate EWED's time today on the eve of the Holy War. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock in Provo. All right, with IFA's Step 4 Fall and Winter Lawn Food, you'll get stronger roots now and an early green up next spring. It is the ultimate lawn owner power move. More can be found at your IFA or at ifa.coop. And time now to win 2 tickets to see Sal Vulcano on October the 25th at the Eccles Theater text line. Just at the Eccles Theater. So 2 tickets on the line to see Sal Vulcano October the 25th at the Eccles Theater. Text in your final score prediction for Utah BYU to 877-353-0700. Porter will pick one winner, and we will send you to see Sal Vulcano October the 25th at the Eccles Theater. We are live today. Would love to meet you guys out here at the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event at 5544 West, 2400 South. Put that address in the GPS. Very easy to find. You can check out the website, which is WarnerIneosGrenadier.com. They're doing their event until 6 o'clock tonight. They're going to open up tomorrow at 10 a.m., and they'll go until 3 p.m. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, I would recommend not buying anything until you have seen these vehicles. They're like G-Wagons built for off-roading, but you can also just use them for everyday practical driving. They're phenomenal vehicles, designed and built more capable, more durable, more reliable. Fun to drive on the road as well as off-road. They paired with an award-winning engine and renowned transmission and tuned and calibrated specifically for great drivability on any road from city to highway to twisty mountain passes. Ineos created the ultimate 4x4 designed for the 21st century, and you got to take one for a spin. We're giving away hats and T-shirts. And if you roll on out today, you get up to $2,000 in free accessories with a purchase of any new vehicle. Food trucks out here, so we're having a good time. They're just kind of rebuilt G-Wagons. They're beautiful, beautiful cars. So come on out and take one for a test drive during the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event at 5544 West, 2400 South on this Friday afternoon. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. We still have a jam-packed show ahead. Good stuff with EWED today. We'll bring in Roxy Bernstein. Coming up in just a bit, Sam Bruckhouse will join us to break down the game. Spencer Hall, one of my favorite college football writers. We'll do a little golf later on as the Black Desert Resort is set to welcome the PGA Tour with Paul Pugmire. And then we'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the show on a Friday. Happy Friday to you. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Friday edition of the program. Of course, it is Christmas Eve for a lot of college football fans around here. We're high speed ahead to Utah, traveling down to Provo to take on Brigham Young, where the Utes find themselves as a slight favorite. According to the odds makers in Vegas, ESPN FPI actually has BYU as like a 52% chance to win. Who knows? I mean, it feels like with a game this close with two teams so tied at the hip and two teams so similar, you could probably just find whatever number you're looking for based off of who you're cheering for. It's kind of like a political situation. We all are in our echo chambers. You can find news coverage to support your already political beliefs, regardless of what's actually true. You can kind of do the same thing with this game. Depending on which team you cheer for, you can find a metric that indicates your team is going to win, which is interesting. But, of course, we'll continue to talk about this game. Roxy Bernstein will join us, our old buddy from the Pac-12 Network, who certainly called a lot of Utah and BYU football games. We'll get into the weeds with Sam Bruckhouse about some of the schematic approaches from these coaching staffs. What does each team do well? One of my favorite college football guests is Spencer Hall. Good get today to get Spencer on the program. Eric Weddle just joined us. Porter, have you had this? This is pretty remarkable when you look at, and look, we kind of first started to hear about Gage even when he was in 8th grade. Gage Weddle is Eric's son, who Eric is coaching. He's been named the #1 athlete in the 2028 class. And according to a Twitter announcement made this week, Ohio State is the latest to offer Gage Weddle. This feels like we used to do this with the NBA stuff when we were talking about how the Jazz could actually find a star player. And we made the parallel, well, like LeBron was born in Northeast Ohio, so of course the Cavs benefited from that. We need some sort of like generational NBA player to be born in Utah to stay here. Gage feels like the type of kid that can really change a program. I wonder if you had a chance to watch him at all.
Yeah, I've of course, as high school tape is, right? You're doing a lot of highlight watching, so I'm always trying to be careful there. But I've tuned into a few Rancho games just because we're Eric, friend of the show, friend of the program, of course, and tried to watch him just on a live game, right? And he pops off the screen, man. He is really good. And unlike Eric, he's not undersized for like every position that he wants to play at the next level. Eric Weddle was undersized as a high schooler. He was undersized as a Division I college football player. He was undersized as an NFL player. And yet, despite all that, was, probably a Hall of Famer at the NFL level, at least if you ask me. His kid, he's 6'2", 6'3". He's already, 180, 190 pounds, fluid athlete, just built a little bit more to play the game, right? And, as his frame builds out, he'll only become a better prospect. And you combine that with what we know, just a maniacal Eric Weddle when it comes to talking, watching, discussing football. He's grown up with that his entire life. And if you've ever been around Eric on a sideline or in the press box, he doesn't stop with that, like analyzing what's happening in front of him. And that's something that's been happening in his living room with that kid for, 17 years now? It's exciting. But like you said, there are some big-name programs after him. So keeping him, or rather getting him to Salt Lake is not going to be a small task.
Well, when Morgan Scalley takes over for Kyle Whittingham, I believe there will be an opening for a defensive coordinator. Am I understanding that correctly?
This would be true.
Mm-hmm. Well, it happens all the time. Like the Knicks hired Rick Brunson to be a coach, and suddenly they get Jalen. So you could do worse than Eric Weddle as a defensive coordinator, yeah?
The Ian Martinez to the Utes situation.
Yeah.
I think the Utes fans would prefer the Weddle one there. Yeah,
very exciting. Yeah, very exciting potential with this young man, Gage Weddle, Eric's boy. All right, who wants to be my co-host? I host a solo show. Porter is kind of a quasi-co-host, but he's also a producer. He wears 75 different hats. So who wants to be my co-host? Time for your chance to enter to win your turn at the mic, a chance to appear on The Drive with Spence Checketts, my show. You also get tickets to the Utah-Colorado game. We'll have some lunch in studio for you, $250 to spend at the Ute Red Zone store. So listen for the keywords every day on The Drive and text them to 33986. This is all courtesy of America First, the official credit union of U Athletics, and the only place you can get the Utah Athletics Visa debit card. So you'll roll in the studio, and I'll let you decide what the topics are. If you're a Ute fan, chop it up about Utah football. If you're a Jazz fan, we'll do some hoops. RSL, we'll talk soccer, pro football, whatever you want to do. You are in charge, and we'll do a segment together. We'll just have a good time, and we'll get some food in studio. You can go to the Utah-Colorado game. $250 to spend at the Utah Red Zone store. So text GOAL right now to 33986. That is GOAL to 33986 for your chance to win a chance to come in the studio with me. And it's brought to you by our friends at America First Credit Union. And they've got great deals right now. If you're frustrated with your current bank situation, maybe you're being charged too many fees, you can't get anybody on the phone, the customer service is bad, I would really recommend looking at America First Credit Union. They've got some really good deals going on right now. Go to americafirst.com/deals. Special offer for new members, $100 on the house. A new member offer when you open a share savings and checking account. You can get $50 for your teens. I am a father, and I took advantage of this deal to kind of start to teach my young son how money works. So $50 for your teens, new member offer, $100 for you. And, of course, if you're a Utah fan, you got to run to take advantage of this because America First is the official credit union of U Athletics. With the Utah Athletics Visa debit card, you get the following benefits. If you're sick of like this secondary market to try to buy and sell tickets, you get special ticket offers as an America First member, and you get exclusive tickets and prices to Utah sporting events on Ticketmaster.com. One of the coolest things they do is if you've ever tried to get in a Rice-Eccles Stadium, when everybody is trying to get in at once, it can get chaotic. You can beat the crowd and get into Rice-Eccles Stadium up to 2 hours prior to kickoff, which is 30 minutes sooner than the general public. Simply show a valid ticket and your America First Visa debit card to the security officers at Gate L in the southeast corner. So go to americafirst.com/deals, get a little free cash to change banks if you're frustrated with your current banking situation. All right, we're live today, having a good time out here at the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event. The address is 5544 West, 2400 South. Put that address in your GPS, and it's very easy to find. Come on out, take a test drive of one of these really cool vehicles. They're like G-Wagons rebuilt for off-roading. And if you're in the market for a new vehicle, do not make a decision until you come on out here and check it out. We've got food trucks going on. We're giving away T-shirts and hats. So come on out and say what's up. 5544 West, 2400 South, the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event. We'll catch a quick break, bring in Roxy Bernstein coming up on the other side. Friday Drive, keep it here, ESPN 700. All right, Christmas Eve, college football fans around here. We're a little over 24 hours away from Utah BYU tomorrow night, 6 o'clock in Provo. The game is on Fox. You can hear it here on ESPN 700 with pregame coverage beginning at 1 o'clock. We're going to have about 11 hours of game day coverage. And our next guest knows a thing or two about college football around these parts, Roxy Bernstein. Roxy, happy Friday, sir. How are you?
Spence, what's up, my man? Life is
Oh,
good.
man. Yeah, this is quite a week. This is quite a week. And you are in town for another assignment, but you know what we need to talk about today. It is BYU and Utah football tomorrow night in Provo. You know, we talked to a lot of out-of-towners, as it were, that maybe don't have perspective on this game, but you're different. You've called games for both these teams. When I just say holy war, what comes to your mind?
Well, they wanted us to refrain from using that term, but we all know what it represents, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is pinnacle for your football fan. You're on one side or the other of this rivalry. There's no middle ground. You're either wearing the blue for BYU, the red for the Utes, and you're going to ride with that side. And it's going to be a great scene, great environment tomorrow night. I honestly thought about staying the extra day because I am off tomorrow, Spence. But I don't think that would have gone over very well with my wife, as much as I have been gone recently, to say, hey, I'm going to stay in Salt Lake City for an extra day, and I'm going to go to the football game, and I'm not working. Yeah, as much as I really wanted to go, probably would not have been a good idea.
Well, happy wife, happy life. You made the right call there, Roxy. There's no doubt about that. I wonder, is there any other rivalry in college football that is 40 miles apart, that has the cross-pollination of BYU coaches coaching for Utah, of Utah coaches coaching for BYU, players that have transferred to both schools? I mean, it feels very unique, but I want to make sure it's not just my little prism and my blinders on. Is there another rivalry in college football that has these dynamics?
Well, Cal and Stanford to an extent. There's been a few guys that have been on both sides of it, have played on both sides of it. For fact, Bill Walsh, the legendary coach who coached at Stanford on 2 different occasions as the head coach, actually was an assistant at Cal. Tom Holmoe, the just retired BYU AD, was a Stanford defensive coordinator, the Cal head coach. There are some connections with that rivalry, but I just don't see it's an intensity between the two, and it may be lessened the last couple of years. Because, let's face it, Cal kind of hitched their wagon to Stanford to get into the ACC. And Stanford took care of their rival. Where Utah and BYU, there is some real dislike and some hatred about the team on the other side, and some disgust that might not be there with the Cal-Stanford rivalry.
And, you know, there are a lot of dynamics that make this a unique iteration of Utah BYU. We have 2 teams in the top 25. That's only happened 3 other times in the history of this rivalry. We have 2 teams very much alive for the Big 12 championship still at this portion of the season. There's a lot of football left to be played. We have Fox Big Noon in town. We have a lot of different dynamics that have come into play here. It might be Witt's last game coaching against BYU. So the stakes feel, Roxy, as high as they've ever been. Is it hyperbolic to say this is potentially the biggest and most impactful iteration of Utah BYU football of all time?
You can definitely make that argument. And your points about, okay, now that they're back in the same league and both teams are ranked and gunning for a Big 12 championship, and it makes a lot of sense. And with what rides on this game tomorrow night, it's certainly critical when you look at the Big 12 standings. And aside from just the rivalry, right, how critical it is in the landscape of the Big 12, because that's the design for both BYU and Utah, is to win the conference. And BYU's 3-0, which is pretty remarkable considering the true freshman at quarterback. And then for Utah, they've got a conference loss already. They're trying to hang in there, so they're going to be desperate tomorrow night as well. But this is a league that has a lot of balance. You look at the top, certainly Texas Tech appears to be the team to beat. I think Cincinnati has surprised a lot of teams so far in the Big 12. Iowa State has maybe taken a step back, so has Kansas State. And there's an opportunity here, and if BYU can win this game tomorrow night, all of a sudden they've got the separation. They're 2 games up on Utah and would have a tiebreaker. so there might be the urgency a little bit more for Utah tomorrow night to come away with a win down in Provo, considering they can't afford to fall that far back in the race as far as the Big 12 goes.
Utah installed as a 3.5-point favorite as the line opened, and it's been pretty wild. Typically with a game like this, there's action on it. There hasn't been much. It moved for a moment yesterday, Roxy, to Utah is a 3-point favorite. Overnight, it's moved back up as the Utes are a 3.5-point favorite, even though they're on the road. Your thoughts on the fact that Utah is the favorite, even though this is in Provo?
It is a bit surprising to be a road favorite, considering you look at the two records, and okay, Utah's 5-1, BYU 6-0. They're unbeaten, and they have played really good football. Now, and they found a way to come back and win. You know, that game last week against Arizona, which was impressive, to find a way to win that game when they were down after they jumped out early. They haven't necessarily played the most challenging schedule. I think that plays into it. The back half of the schedule is pretty daunting for BYU. When you look at after Utah, they have to go to Ames, Iowa. They have also to go to Lubbock. Those are two huge road games coming up. And then TCU, which has been a little bit of a frustration, I think, point for some Big 12 people have thought they could make a run, but the Horned Frogs are 1-2. Then you have to go to Cincinnati. I don't know if anybody in the Big 12 has a rougher second half schedule-wise than BYU, considering the 3 road games they have left on the schedule. And
because of that, it feels, and this is another hyperbolic thing to say, and I'm not a hot take hyperbolic host, but it feels like an elimination game, Roxy, for both teams. Now, it's not literally that, because there's plenty of football left to be played, but 2 losses might not be enough. It was last year. It might not this year. And based off of BYU's schedule the rest of the way, it's just hard for me to see them staying clean even if they win tomorrow. So if they lose tomorrow, it feels like it could be an elimination game for BYU based off their schedule. And if Utah loses tomorrow, that's their second conference loss and another tiebreaker that they would not have. Does it feel like potentially an elimination game to you for both teams in the scope of trying to win a Big 12 championship?
It very well could be, because of, the daunting schedule BYU has. A little bit easier the rest of the way. Not easy, though, for Utah, considering you still have Cincinnati. You have to go to Baylor, and you have Kansas State and Kansas on the schedule. But there are opportunities. I think there's more opportunities for wins for Utah than there are for BYU down in the second half of the season, even though I'm not saying they can't win those games on the road. But it does lend itself to Utah at a more favorable route if they get the win tomorrow night in Provo to potentially winning the Big 12 championship this year.
So let me get your thoughts on this. For whichever team wins, it feels like it's probably time just to say that Texas Tech isn't just the best team in the Big 12, but maybe one of the top 6 or 7 teams in the country, maybe even better than that. I mean, they're smoking everybody. Their talent pops. I was on the sidelines when they were here. That's a good team. So if we operate off the premise, and their schedule is relatively favorable the rest of the way, and combine that with how good I think they are, there's a good chance that Tech will finish the season undefeated. They may not. It's a really hard thing to do. But let's operate off the premise that they do, okay? So if either Utah or BYU, whichever team wins tomorrow, if they go the rest of the way and enter the Big 12 championship game against Texas Tech. So Texas Tech has already beat Utah. My guess is they're going to beat BYU. Do you think either BYU or Utah going to the Big 12 championship game and even losing a second time to Texas Tech, do you think that's a scenario where the Big 12 could get 2 teams in? Tech, of course, goes, and then a 2-loss either BYU or Utah team with both losses coming to Tech. Do you think that's enough to get 2 teams in?
I do, because if you make the Big 12 championship game, and it's a power conference, and you're going through it with just 2 losses, and the only blemish you have outside of that is, Texas Tech in the championship game. Now, certainly it would help their cause to win that championship game if you're guaranteed in. And Texas Tech would be in regardless. But I do believe that if, for example, it is BYU, and let's say BYU gets there and they have 2 losses and it's both to Texas Tech, I don't know how you keep them out. And for Utah, if they happen to run the table, should they win tomorrow night, and they lose again to Texas Tech, in the Big 12 championship, to me, that's enough to get them in as well. Or if you look at, for example, look, I don't know how the rest of the thing's going to play out for Cincinnati, but they're sitting with one overall loss right now as well. And I think that they've surprised a lot of people to be in this position, but there's an opportunity for them that this should be a two-bid league as far as the college football playoff goes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that assertion. All right, I won't ask you to make a pick, but I will ask you what your heart tells you, what your gut tells you. Do you have a lean as far as who you think gets it done tomorrow night in Provo?
I kind of give the edge to Utah just because I think that they're better up front, even though I do think BYU is really good up front. I do like the skilled people at BYU, but I have a little bit more faith in a veteran quarterback than Bachmeier as a freshman. And so I give a little bit of a nod to Utah, even though they're on the road. I think this is a tight game that gets to the fourth quarter. It's going to be a one-possession game. And I just give a slight edge because of the experience factor to Utah.
Okay, before I set you loose, you are in town on assignment to call a little hockey, and it's great to have hockey back. As you know, we are now Hockey Town USA. Do respect Detroit. I think that's the moniker that we have now. Home opener the other night, and it's a revamped Delta Center. It's a good young team with some pieces added in the offseason. Paterka gets a goal the other night in the Delta Center. Vegas is telling us that we have a playoff hockey team here in Salt Lake. So as you've dug in for your prep tonight, what have you learned? What do you think about the Utah Mammoth this season?
Well, the analytics people tell us that they're a playoff team as well. That I've seen that they have the fifth best chance in the Western Conference. With Sathletes, one of the services that we use, says that the Mammoth have an 88% chance to get to the playoffs. And I do believe this is a better team. They finished it last year strong, and they had one of the best records after the Frozen or the Four Nations face-off there to close out the season. The goals will start coming. I know people are getting a little anxious about the offense. They're going to score. They're fine. I think defensively they've been really good so far. What Andre Tourné wants them to do in terms of limiting the opportunities, keeping the opponents to the outside. They're right now number one in the league and fewest shots allowed per game. Vemelka's been really good in net. But this is a team that will start scoring, and I'm not worried about the power play either. People are making a big deal about Utah's power play. They're just 1 for 16 through the first 4 games. Even though they didn't score in the power play Wednesday, I thought it looked crisp. I thought it looked good. They just didn't happen to score. The goals will come. I'm not worried about that. I like the depth of this team, and I like the balance. But the key with them, and it was a problem for them last year, Spence, was staying healthy back on the blue line. They got to keep Sergachev in the lineup. They need Marino. I know Jersey's on the injured list already, and the shoulder was an issue last year. I think it's his other shoulder that's a problem this year. But they need to stay relatively healthy in terms of those guys. And I do like the firepower they have up front that will start putting the puck in the net, I'm sure of it.
All right, my friend. Well, I wish we could have had you in studio, but I'm out and about today, so I always appreciate your time. Have an excellent call tonight, and congrats on making the right decision to stay married, but I'm sure you'll be watching Utah BYU tomorrow, okay?
I will have it on. Yes, it will be on at home.
There we go. That's our guy, Roxy Bernstein, one of our favorites in town to call the Mammoth game tonight. San Jose is in town. Mammoth were able to win their home opener the other night against Calgary. 7 o'clock, drop of the puck. It's on ESPN Plus and Hulu, and our guy Roxy Bernstein will be on the call. The Jazz had a pretty entertaining preseason game last night. They're going to start things up for real next week. Ace Bailey held out of the game last night. RSL's in action tomorrow in a must-win game if they want to make the postseason. But, of course, all the attention on Utah BYU down in Provo tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We'll catch a break, and we'll get into the weeds about what makes BYU tick, what makes Utah tick. Sam Bruckhouse, Sumer Sports, will stop by after a quick break. 4 o'clock hour, Spencer Hall, one of our favorite college football guests. I'm sure he'll have some great things to say about this matchup tomorrow. Do a little golf with Paul Pugmire, launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the show. And then we will say goodnight at 6 in time for some Major League Baseball playoffs. Busy day on the show. Roxy stops by today, courtesy of IFA Country Stores. With IFA Step 4 fall and winter lawn food, you'll get stronger roots now and an early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move. More at your local IFA or at IFA.coop. Quick break. Sam Bruckhouse is next on ESPN 700. Porter, please Google the world record for eating 3 tacos. I'd like to know if I qualify based off of my performance during the break.
It was a pretty long break. I don't know about that.
Well,
Impressive nonetheless, though.
You don't have to harsh my mellow, but we do have a taco truck out here. So if you want some free tacos, T-shirts, hats, main thing you should do is take a test drive of one of these vehicles. Holy smokes. You're going to have to give me a second. It's the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event, 5544 West, 2400 South. Chicken carne asada tacos. Man, that was good. But it was probably unhealthy how quickly I ate those tacos. All right, more football. Sam Bruckhouse, our buddy from Sumer Sports, on a Friday. Sam, happy Friday, man. How you doing?
Happy Friday, Spence. You know, I'm an annual goer of the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest.
Ooh.
I have seen Joey Chestnut eat over, 200, 300 hot dogs at this point. So I got to say, if it was just 3, you're probably well south of the world record.
Okay, fair enough. I was impressed at my ability to get all 3 down, but nonetheless, I'm probably not close to the record. So, Sam, it's a big week around here. When I say Utah, BYU football, holy war, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think of the great names who have been on these teams, and you got to think of the matchups and the differences in culture, the difference in play styles. But now we have 2 hard-nosed teams, and it's been that way the last couple of years. I'm excited to see how these offenses progress. You know, last year, my own Tulane now quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, was the quarterback. Really a big question mark for Utah at the quarterback position. This year we have a little bit more stability. We have 2 of the better teams in the nation. I think this is going to be a really quality, hard-nosed, old-school football game.
You know, Utah, a 3.5-point favorite, even though it is on the road down in Provo. Are you surprised that Utah is favored, even though it will be played at LaVell Edwards Stadium?
I think when we discussed the Utah-Texas Tech game, I still believed in Utah, and I think that contest that they put on against Texas Tech, who has since then absolutely rocked any opponent that they've faced, it really shows that this Utah team is still one of the best teams in the country. They still have NFL prospects on both offensive line and defensive line, and they still have Devin Dampier, who, even though on the road, is unlikely to take negative sacks and is unlikely to throw bad picks. I think that's why it makes sense that Utah is the favorite here.
So a lot of the conversation is about BYU potentially just making Devin show that he can beat them through the air with, passes that aren't just dump downs, check downs, or screens. He's 3 of 19 on passes of 20 yards or more. And look, ASU, Sam, rolled into town last week with a defense whose data said they're good against the run and not great against the pass. So I thought Devin was going to have to throw it 25, 30 times. He threw it 12 times. They didn't have to throw it. They ran all over Arizona State. So 2-part question. Do you think BYU will be successful at least stymieing Utah's run game a little bit? And if they are, do you have confidence Devin can get it done through the air if he needs to?
I think on the first question, I think that Utah will be dictating the rules of engagement here. We saw Fanu and Lomu and the other guys on that squad be able to dictate basically everyone else. Like you said, Arizona State, Texas Tech gave them some trouble, but for the most part, they were able to move the ball. It was just some one-off plays that stymied their drives. I think that this will probably be a strong offensive line game for Utah. Although, as you stated, BYU's defense is very good. I think the question is can the BYU team respond with physicality with the young quarterback and be able to continue and play that success rate game? We talk about that all the time, Spence. Some of the best teams realize what other teams are trying to do to them, and they just try to beat you one play at a time. If BYU can do that on the flip side of the ball, I think this will be a close game. Otherwise, I think Utah dictates the rules of engagement on offense.
I love that line. Utah dictates the rules of engagement. That's a great, great line because, we know that Witt wants to run the ball, and we know that Jason Beck, even though it is a, kind of a spread-out option attack, he does it with the design of gashing teams on the ground. On the other side, Sam, to Coach Witt's own admission and Morgan Scalley's own admission, a program that's known as a hard-nosed defensive program at times has had troubles tackling in space, and there's some injuries in the secondary, namely to safeties. Can Bear Bachmeier take the top off? It feels like BYU is going to have to create some big chunk plays in their passing game. Do you think Bear can get that done against a secondary who at times has struggled tackling in space this year?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's going to come down really to offensive design. You know, we've done studies at Sumer Sports about what the most efficient plays are, and we call the middle of the field pass the three-pointer of football. Yeah, it's harder. In basketball, you move yourself back a little bit. You got to change your form a little bit. But once you get it down, you got to complete those passes. I think that is the key to the game for BYU. Can the young quarterback, in one of the biggest games of his life against one of the most talented teams in the country and a very experienced offense on the other side, can he complete those middle-of-the-field passes? You mentioned the two safeties are in doubt. And if you can attack there, it opens everything up. I think that's what they need to do in particular early. So monitor the middle of the field passing game, monitor the effectiveness of it, and if that starts to click early, that could mean that this game takes a turn for BYU.
BYU's offensive line versus Utah's defensive front. You know, John Henry Daly, who once upon a time was a BYU player, has proven to be a revelation up here. You know, Utah had to replace 5 different players along the defensive front, whether it's graduation or Keanu Tanavasa transfers down to Brigham Young. So a lot of questions about who would emerge. And Logan Fano is a player a lot of people looked at, but really it's been John Henry Daly. And on the other side, BYU's offensive line had to replace pieces as well. They've been better, meaning BYU, than I thought that they would be, whether it's Bear or LJ Martin, who's one of the best backs in the Big 12.
Right.
What do you see with that matchup, Utah's defensive front against BYU's run game and offensive line?
We saw LJ Martin last year, when he was healthy, really be able to generate success rate despite pretty much any who they faced. So I think LJ Martin will get his. I think the real question is, can Bear Bachmeier create with his legs? Like you said, this is a stout, young, and upcoming defensive front that Utah has. If Bachmeier can drop back and be able to make plays with his legs, soften up that defensive pass rush, keep them from pinning their ears back, I think that's going to be a major difference in this game. We've seen teams kind of be able to hurt the Utah defense with that, particularly that Texas Tech game. As the backup came in, started to deliver with his legs, that opened up the passing game down on the perimeter, and I think that's going to be the key for Bear to really kind of counteract this defensive front, will be the scramble game.
Before we move off this game, I'll bottom line it, and you've already dissected a bunch of really interesting angles and dynamics. But if you could reduce it down to Utah wins if what, and BYU wins if what do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think the script is as it is every single game. Utah wins if the offensive line gets great push and Devin Dampier can play his game. Short, accurate, quick passes added in with an excellent running game. I think that's the truth of there, and I think that probably adds to them scoring just over 24 points and being able to make this kind of their type of game. I think there's a couple scenarios in which BYU wins. I think there is a scenario where this game is just tight. It's an old-school rivalry. It stays underneath 21 points on both sides, and I think BYU would probably take the victory there. And I think if it goes way over the top and it starts getting out of control and Devin Dampier is challenged to really make downfield throws, make big-time throws, hard completion percentage over expected plays, I think then that probably goes BYU's way as well.
Will you be so bold to tell me which scenario you think is more likely?
I think this is going to be Utah, probably by a score of about 28-17.
Okay, fair enough. I sat down last night to watch Thursday Night Football with very low expectations. And when you have low expectations, you're very pleasantly surprised when great things happen. Flacco, he looked great. Jamar Chase doing Jamar Chase things. And Aaron Rodgers answered the bell. The battle of the geriatric quarterbacks on Thursday Night Football, Sam, turned out to be really, really entertaining.
Yeah, I think that game was won by Jamar Chase. You look at the stat line, and it really tells you everything. 23 targets. It makes you wonder what they could have done last week if Joe Flacco would have been in the house for more than 2 days. It's clear what the game plan is for Zach Taylor going forward. It is get 30-plus targets, which is an insane number. I mean, like, even Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams now in 2025 don't see 30-plus targets. That's what we saw. It was getting near 40 targets for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. That was their bread and butter last year with Joe Burrow, obviously a more talented quarterback who's probably going to be able to drop back 40, 50 times a game and be able to produce for you. I think they're going to have the games that we saw from Joe Flacco when he helped Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns 2 years ago make the playoffs, where he'll throw 2 and 3 picks. That certainly was not what we saw yesterday. Jamar Chase was able to create an incredible amount of space against a retooled Pittsburgh Steelers secondary that up until now has kind of been able to keep it together. That was the real weakness last year. They add Jalen Ramsey, who got burnt a couple times by both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I think they really exposed that as a true weakness, as we thought it would be preseason. But you got to give it up to Flacco, and you got to give it up in particular to Jamar Chase. I think they did an excellent job, the two highly paid wide receivers, of making his life really, really easy. He was able to get the ball in the air, and thus they come out with the win.
Love Mike Tomlin. I don't know a media member who doesn't. And I loved his comments about the Browns trading Flacco in division. I thought it was very honest and very blunt, and I completely understand where he's coming from. Sam, help me understand how Flacco, within 10 days, was able to grasp understand the assignment just like that. The Bengals offensive system, why is it a fit for Flacco? Is it just him being around for 18 years, or is there something specific that makes him be able to do what he did last night and potentially moving forward until Burrow's healthy?
Yeah, judging by his post-game interview, he wasn't able to grasp it. He said there was a lot of times where the play was coming into his headset and he just decided to kind of wing the play call based off of what he knew, and that ended up with a lovely read option from the 42-year-old Flacco. Never known as much a runner. That got me off my seat. That got me excited. But he said that was kind of a play that he just didn't know what the play call was. He messed up the formation and just made a decision pre-snap that he was going to have to take it and run. Worked out for him. I think the question really becomes is this just a blip game? We've seen Russell Wilson have this type of game and get benched earlier on in the season. And if you really look at the efficiency numbers, Flacco wasn't doing much. He was dead last in EPA per play when he was with the Browns, and the Bengals went ahead, offered him a fifth-round pick. If you know you're going to move off of that, it makes sense for the Browns to make that deal. I think this is a win-win for both teams because the real struggle for the Bengals was an inability to just get the ball in the air to Jamar Chase. Joe Flacco is a veteran quarterback, as you mentioned. He will be able to get the ball in the air. The question is are those picks going to come? I probably believe, given the last couple of years, that we'll have some games later on where there'll be 3 or 4 more picks. But I think just the ability of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to make plays makes any quarterback probably make me and you look good, Spence.
Well, that's kind of you. I'm 47. My best days are far behind me. Let's move over to Buffalo. On a scale of 1 to whatever, how concerned should Bills fans be after 2 straight losses?
I just don't think you can be concerned right now. I think this is an interesting league, and I think they faced some pretty good but up-and-coming talent that people didn't think. Weeks ago they faced Drake May, who has played excellently. That team is incredible on offense as it stands right now. Perhaps some rookie regression or sophomore regression, I say, is in bound. But I think you really look at the Bills team, and it all is about Josh Allen. I think teams are doing a pretty good job of making him go underneath and also keeping him in the pocket. But you can only do that for so long. This reminds me of years that we've seen in the past where Patrick Mahomes had question marks or Lamar Jackson has question marks. You can only keep those guys down so long. I still believe in an excellent offensive line, one of the best in the league, that leads to a great running game. And when it's fueled by a 6'5" monster at quarterback who is now extremely accurate as well as being able to create with his feet, I think they're just going to be able to figure it out. The big question mark, which it has been for 2 or 3 years now, is the defense. The defense has much of the same personnel that it's had for the last 2 or 3 years. They have real question marks at linebacker, which has caused them problems. But I think at the end of the day, they'll be able to play through their defensive line. Gregory Rousseau out of Miami, the big defensive end who typically is around Pro Bowl conversations. And I think they'll be able to lock in and keep themselves as one of the top teams, if not the top team, schedule-wise, of course, in the AFC.
Same question about the Eagles after 2 straight losses. And, even before they stacked up a couple of L's, there was a lot of conversation and concern about the lack of offensive punch. But when you're winning football games, you can kind of put that stuff aside. But how concerned should Eagles fans be after the last 2 losses?
Here's what I'll say I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about the defense as long as these injuries don't stay. When you're losing Jalen Carter and Quinyon Mitchell, that's two borderline – one true All-Pro, one borderline All-Pro players. You lose Quinyon in the middle of the game. The game kind of spirals out of control behind some inspired play by Jackson Dart and Cam Scattaboo. And I'm not worried about that defense. I think that defense is still the best certified in the league. They have the best talent, and they're able to do it at a high level. They've been able to kind of scheme around those cornerbacks that I've been talking about all the way since the preseason. They've kind of figured it out there. I think that defense is still good. But they have the biggest weakness that you can have in the game of football, particularly at the National Football level, which is their passing offense is anemic at best. We have to see some innovation from offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. We have to see increased play by Jalen Hurts and an ability to get the ball to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who started to show signs of frustration. Right now they are a middling efficiency team. We have not seen any blue-chip Sumer scores from many of their players. And I think the run game also has to come, but I'm not as worried about the run game. I think once that offensive line gets a little bit healthy, Jeff Stoutland will be able to get that run game going, the offensive line coach. I am extremely worried about the pass game. That's the biggest weakness an NFL team can have. They've been able to manage it for the better part of 2 years, but I just have real question marks, especially when you have to play against the Cowboys, who have the best passing offense in the league. You have to play against the Giants, who have a very scary defensive front and a frisky quarterback and running back at least. And then you have to play against the Commanders, who also have an excellent quarterback and have a pressure-packed defensive scheme. I think that's a bad setup for them. I think it was a bad setup going into the year, and I'm interesting to see if they can just out-talent people as the chemistry improves, hopefully, as the season goes on.
Before I set you loose, I'm going to ask you about 2 5-1 teams and whether or not you are buying entirely into either the Colts or the Bucs.
I'm not buying into the Colts. I think that this is a very similar team to what we've seen in the past. They're just executing at such a high level right now that they're able to beat some of these teams. I think there's probably still an 8 or 9 win team. You know, last year with the Joe Flacco question marks and the Andy Richardson question marks, they were still able to get it done behind an excellent offensive and defensive line. That's the way you build a team. Shane Steichen knows how to win with those guys. I think it's still probably an 8 and 9 win team. I think we'll see them drop some games here and there as the year goes on, and maybe we'll still feel like they're a very good team, but they'll end up at the 9-10 win mark. I love the Bucs. The Bucs are deep. Obviously, they've lost most of their wide receivers, which is a big question mark at this point, but they're going to get those guys back at some point. They have excellent offensive linemen, headlined by Tristan Wirfs. Luke Edeke has been in and out of the lineup, but add him in, and that's another highly paid, highly impactful tackle. And also they have a pretty good defense that is led by a defensive mastermind in Todd Bowles, who is also somehow the guru at hiring offensive coordinators. This is probably going to be the third year Josh Grizzard, who was in-house last year, bumped up to the offensive coordinator, will be considered for head coaching because of Baker Mayfield's play. He's now an MVP candidate. I'd push back on anyone betting on Baker for MVP odds, but this is a well-built team, a well-coached team, a well-coordinated team. And when you have all three of those things and have a bunch of key players coming off the edge and blocking on the edge, and you got a shifty Baker Mayfield at the quarterback position making big plays, they should definitely be one of the better teams in the NFC, in my opinion.
Sam, where can people go get the work, buddy?
Yeah, so go check us out at SumerSports.com. We have Sumer Brain up, and it really is democratizing data. We have a bunch of great charting data up there. Today I was looking at Joe Flacco's performance against middle-of-the-field coverage looks. That's data you can't get anywhere else, and you can't interface with it the way you interface a search or ChatGPT or something like that. That is what we have worked on for a long time. It's in beta. We invite you to really put it through its paces. That's SumerSports.com/SumerBrain.
Good stuff, my friend. Enjoy the games this weekend. We'll chat next week.
Thank y'all so much.
Great Sam Bruckhouse, Sumer Sports. Good stuff there from Sam today. I want to tell you about my friends at Outlaw Distillery. Outlaw Distillery is the official spirits provider of our VIP ESPN 700 tailgates at each home game this Ute season. They've got amazing drinks like their honey bourbon, vodka, spiced rum, and coffee rum. And they just came out with a new barrel-proof bourbon sitting at 133 proof. Goodness. And it is spicy, bold, and very smooth. Told there's bottles left, so get yours today. Fantastic with an old-fashioned or mixed drinks. Get a taste either at our VIP tailgate this season or go check out every one of their options at Big Willie's Sports Bar, another fantastic partner of ESPN 700. Outlaw Distillery, truly a grain-to-glass product forged in the history of the American West. Check out our friends at Outlaw Distillery at outlawdistillery.com, found at all state liquor stores. Now, we are live today at the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event. It is a beautiful day. I can tell you that they have a taco truck where they're just giving away tacos, and they are amazing. We've got hats, we've got T-shirts, we have ESPN 700 tote bags, we got a little Ute gear out here as well. The address is 5544 West, 2400 South. Best thing to do is put that in your GPS and just follow it out here. It is their global test drive event. Check out the website, which is it is WarnerIneosGrenadier.com. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, these are really cool. They look like rebuilt G-Wagons designed for off-roading. And if you come on out and take a test drive, during this test drive event today and tomorrow, you get $2,000 in free accessories with a purchase of any new vehicle. As I referenced, taco trucks, T-shirts, hats, and a lot more. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, check out our good friends out here at the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event at 5544 West, 2400 South. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Spencer Hall starts things off in the 4 o'clock hour. College football comes your way next here on ESPN 700. About 26 hours away from Utah BYU tomorrow night in Provo. 6 o'clock kick time. Our pregame coverage as your home of the Utes will begin at 1 o'clock with Porter Larson and former Ute Trevor Riley. On a Friday afternoon, Steely Dan is reserved for one man and one man only, Spencer Hall, my guy. Happy Friday, Spencer. How we doing, bud?
I am thrilled. There's so much good football on tap this weekend, and then there's the Holy War, which this year is. You tell me. This is my initial read on this game. It's phenomenally even, just terrifying in terms of trying to make a pick in this game. I don't envy anyone who has to.
No, absolutely. And you had the layers, Spencer, that they're so similar, and there's so much familiarity with the coaching staffs and two quarterbacks that are dynamic and can make plays. I mean, Utah is a 3.5-point favorite, but the history of this thing tells us that unless there's a massive talent gap, the 2004 Alex Smith Utah blowout, that something weird is going to happen, and it's going to come down to something that none of us can anticipate.
Turnovers. That's what this game will come down to. This is the answer, by the way, that you have to give when you can't see much daylight between these teams. And I think if you want to avoid the cliche and give you a reason for saying that, it's this. There are two incredible quarterbacks in this game. They're going to touch on every single offensive snap. They're going to touch the ball, and then they're actually going to be a key part of that play, more so than in most systems, because both Bachmeier and Dampier run the ball, and they're key parts of the run game. And one of them is more experienced than the other. And in a game where everything's that tight and you're looking for an edge here or an edge there, experience at the quarterback position is the thing that you say, okay, I think we can lean on that. By the way, I don't even feel that great about making that because Bachmeier's been so good.
Right. It feels like the deeper you go in the weeds, the harder it is to just understand how this is going to go. Just throw a bunch of darts and maybe one will stick against the board. But I was excited to see you on the rundown today because I wanted to get this perspective from you. Utah BYU has this unique thing, and I don't know that any other rivalry in college football has it on this level. Kalani Sitake, Aaron Roderick, Jay Hill, head coach, both coordinators, coached at Utah. Jay played at Utah. Kyle Whittingham was the Defensive Player of the Year in the WAC in the 80s for BYU. Jason Beck, Utah's offensive coordinator, played at BYU. Marky Atuaya, Micah Simon, and they're 40 miles away from each other. Is there another rivalry in college football that has the proximity / cross-pollination that Utah BYU does?
No, I don't think so. And I think there were rivalries that used to sort of mirror that. You used to be able to get that kind of insularity, maybe in the SEC, just because once you coached in the SEC, you just hung around the SEC forever. So it was inevitable that if you had coordinated at Auburn, there was a very good chance that you'd also done time on the staff at Georgia, or if you had done time on the staff at LSU, then maybe you'd worked at Ole Miss, or maybe you'd worked at Arkansas, right? Texas may be the only other place that qualifies like that, but there's nothing that's as focused, and there's nothing that has the kind of deep interwoven rivalry that Utah and BYU have from an institutional standpoint, right? We haven't even begun to talk about, the fans, right, and what the sort of divisions there are and how they sort of differentiate one from the other and pick, what you're going to get mad about. Although a lot of the times, consider this, a lot of the most intense rivalries are between two groups who are basically the same. And we're just saying, you wear your lapel that way, and I wear my lapel that way. Those are some of the most intense rivalries. I cannot imagine if you threw in an institutional relationship like the two have had with geographical proximity. That's crazy.
Well, and you referenced some there's also the tribalism. There's also a religious undertone to the entire thing where, Brigham Young is a church-owned school, and, there's this whole thing where it's if you're a good member of the LDS Church, you go to BYU. And if you're an apostate, you go to Utah. And obviously those are stereotypes, and I'm not saying that's the deal. But there's also the moral superiority card, BYU fans believing if they win, that is God saying, hey, you are right, keep going, congratulations, validation, your belief system. And Ute fans, if they win, saying, okay, everything you believe is wrong. Like, there's also the undercurrent of this, like, moral superiority hill that the winner gets to stand on.
Oh, that's great. Like, I like everything to have an element of professional wrestling, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to remember that one of the greatest moments in wrestling is when Stone Cold Steve Austin says, and that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so. You have to remember in that match, he's the apostate. He's the one who tells Jake the Snake Roberts, you said all your prayers and it didn't get you anywhere, right? Does Stone Cold believe that? No, he doesn't believe that. But that was the character, right? I like people to play a little bit of a character when you go in. If you're going to be the heel in a rivalry, go ahead, heel it up a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying be disrespectful, but, go ahead, talk your stuff, go out there, play with an edge. I think both of them are doing that, right? I always think BYU plays with as much of an edge as Utah because everyone thinks they're nice. Everyone thinks they're nice, nice choir boys who aren't going to maybe give you a low blow in the pile, maybe hit you a little bit behind the whistle, right? Which are things that I know BYU teams are physical. I think more physical than most. They set the tone for each other. That's the thing that I think is most remarkable. Teams that are so close, coming from a lot of the same schools and even the same pipelines. Like Utah and BYU both pull from some of the same recruiting pipelines, i.e. Texas and Oceania, right? Like the large number of Polynesian players that have gone to both schools. They even pull from the same pipelines. So this is very much an iron sharpens iron matchup, and I think that's one of the reasons that it's so good and so intense.
Yeah, I mean, BYU football players are not unlike BYU fans. They're nice, but they're not kind. There's a big difference between the two.
They're going to play. They're here to play some football. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh no, they sure are. And we had Kalani on, Spencer, last week, and Kalani played for Lavelle Edwards. He was Kyle's defensive coordinator for 10 years up here in Salt Lake, and he's now been the head coach at BYU for a decade. This is his 10th year. And I already referenced Aaron Roderick, their offensive coordinator, coached up here. He was part of the 2008 undefeated team that beat Bam in the Sugar Bowl. Jay Hill played his college ball up here, cut his teeth under Kyle. And I asked Kalani, now that you've built this thing up over 10 years, how much of this is Lavelle? How much of this is Witt? How much of this is you? How much of this is Gary Anderson? And he was very humble in his answer, and because he's the nicest guy, and was very intentional about letting everybody know, like, no, I have built this thing up in a way that I learned from all of these other coaches that ultimately I either played for or coached with. And it does lead to this thing. Like, you referenced that the two teams this year are very similar. Well, now we're in a spot, I think for the first time in my opinion ever, where the two programs are very similar. Not just the teams this year, the two programs, the way they want to play football.
Yeah, and mind you, islands of stability in an otherwise unstable landscape.
Yep.
Which is kind of astonishing given the turnover at major schools across college football. You have guys here who have decades now, right? Now that Sataki's in his 10th year, you said, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem right, but that's only because I'm very old and time has moved quickly. But they are now have been there for double-digit years each, right? And Whittingham's one of the longest tenured coaches in all of college football. That's another sort of thing that makes this very unique. Not only is there this cross-pollination between schools, but there's this kind of stability, and a stability which, by the way, makes them very influential. Like if you look at how people run defenses, if you look at how people organize rosters, if you look at how people have adjusted to the portal era, Utah and BYU have been at the forefront of that kind of stuff, right? Like in terms of, and going back into, like the 2000s and then in the 80s, if there is a new offensive wrinkle that you can do, chances are it either came from, sprang out of, or took a significant turn at BYU or Utah, right? Whether it's a spread option, whether it's what would become the air raid, whether it's the original Lavelle Edwards offense, right? Whether it's, the way how Whittingham has organized defense at the collegiate level, just all of these things, have come from these two schools because of that stability, because maybe we have to take a chance. I think everybody knows that in order to play with the big boys, Utah and both BYU have to take every single little corner that they can a little faster and a little more efficiently than somebody with more money, more population, and more resources.
So during this week, I get more requests to do interviews than almost any other time, unless like the Jazz are good, and the Jazz are not good, and they won't be for a while. And I get asked the same question with every podcast or interview I've done, and that is, do you think people around the country fully understand what this thing is all about? And my assertion, Spencer, is unless you've been in it, you just can't. I feel like from a macro 30,000-foot viewpoint, most anybody who knows the sport like you or covers the sport like you understands what's at stake. And certainly there are extra layers this year with both teams being in the top 25, both teams being very much alive in the Big 12 championship race. It could be Witt's final time coaching against his alma mater. Fox Big Noon is in town. It's a primetime slot. It could be the most viewed game in the history of the 103 years that these two teams have played. But when it comes to the national view of Utah BYU, do you think it actually gets the credit and respect that it deserves based on how crazy it can get? We had a BYU fan arrested this week for threatening to shoot Utah fans if they went it down to Provo. And I could give you 10 other insane things at least that happen every year this week. Do you think people from the outside really understand what's going on here this week?
No, I don't think they do. And I think there's a learning curve because, Utah is America. Utah is the United States. I don't want to talk about Utah like it's a foreign country, but it's a place that has some very distinct regional differences. And it's a place that has a history, which is unlike those around it. So I think you have to go, okay, how does that play into the intensity of this rivalry and the kind of roles that fans occupy, right? It's not alone in having, crazy people wanting to commit violence in the name of football, right? But that's certainly an indicator of, okay, it's a big enough event that, even people who have severe mental problems are like, oh, this is important. How am I gonna be involved? I have an idea. It's not a very good idea, right? But that, to me, I don't think people understand it, right? And I put myself, by the way, I know quite a bit about the history of the whole war. I know quite a lot about the teams. It would be worth – somebody needs to do that long form. Somebody needs to do that, hey, I'm going to sum up the entire rivalry in this because, man, we got 28 different versions of that for the Iron Bowl, right? We got 28 different versions of that for Ohio State and Michigan. We don't have that for BYU, Utah. I think I just did a book pitch, so if anyone's listening to this and wants to pay for it, just let me know.
Okay, well, we will spread the word. I want to bring it back around a little bit to where we started, while understanding it's impossible to predict. Do you have a lean at all as far as how you think tomorrow night? Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah, I have a lean, and I think it's toward Utah. And again, that's only because I think that in a critical moment, if you need a turnover, if you need something to go wrong for one team, it will usually happen with the quarterback with less experience. That's the only thing that I'm betting on here. Everything else is go look at their statistical profiles, man. They are so close, right? And down to yardage, right? Within 10 yards of each other on every single major category and measure of efficiency. So I would bet that just having a larger number of snaps, Devin Dampier is not going to be the one who makes the mistake. Utah's lost one game. They lost one game to a team that I think is one of the best 4 teams in the nation. Texas Tech is incredible. They've been building to this for a bit via NIL, via the portal, and via some solid coaching by McGuire and his staff there. I think that is, I hate to use the phrase quality loss. How's this? That's an inevitable loss. I think you ran into a buzzsaw there. This is a very good team that lost to, I think, a great team, one of the few legitimately great teams in the nation. So I'm going to say Utah by dang near a coin flip.
I completely agree about Tech, and I was actually going to go there next. So you already answered one portion of the question. I've been saying, because I was on the sideline when they were in town, and their talent pops. And Utah's offensive line is insanely good, and Tech's 2 defensive ends, they just dominated that game. Devin was hurt, so there's that, but I'm not taking anything away from Texas Tech. So you've already answered whether or not you think they're one of the best teams in the country, not just in the conference. So Utah's loss to them, I do believe, will age well. But one of the things that I think is also topical as it pertains to tomorrow night is it is potentially an elimination game for the Big 12 championship. Now, potentially, not literally, potentially, because BYU's schedule the rest of the way is tough. They're at Iowa State after Utah. Then they're at Texas Tech. They get TCU at home, but then they're at Cincinnati before closing it off against UCF. It's hard for me to see BYU staying clean, even if they win tomorrow. Now, for Utah, if they lose tomorrow, it is their second conference loss. Is that a nail entirely? Not entirely, but it could be. The rest of the way for Utah, their schedule is easier than BYU. So here's the scenario I want to present. Either Utah or BYU, if they advance to the Big 12 championship game and play an undefeated Texas Tech, and I'm operating off the assumption that BYU will lose to Tech on the road, okay? So if either BYU or Utah goes and plays Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game and Tech beats them, then you have either BYU or Utah with only 2 losses, but both of them to Texas Tech. In that scenario, does Tech and the other team make the CFP?
No, I think at this point it's Tech, and they will say that is our Big 12 team. Now, mind you, that's the answer I have right now.
Sure.
I don't know how the rest of the SEC schedule is going to play out. The SEC is very interesting because I think that this is the highest level of parity I've seen in the SEC in a long time. And I think you could have a very difficult time parsing out who they're going to pull as a second team from the SEC. Ohio State is going to come out of the Big Ten. Just going to spoil everyone for that in case the obvious isn't clear to you. They're really, really good. Miami out of the ACC. I don't think we'll pull 2 Big 12 teams. So, and by the way, steep hill to climb. Like, Tech is the standard right now in the Big 12. They're incredible. They have a tough pull in a very well-coached Arizona State team. I said well-coached because they're not as talented as Texas Tech is right now. And Texas Tech is very well-coached. And Texas Tech has so many things, by the way, just redundancies and insurance policies built into the way that team is constructed. Like, they have 2 quarterbacks who can get the job done. That can happen. They're strong along both lines. So if they lose one of those defensive ends, well, they got another, and they can muddle through until they get both of them. And the backups are really good. They are fearsomely constructed. They are a terrifying team right now. So that is a big, big pull. But that's the answer I have right now. Might not be the answer I have after this weekend if Arizona State beats Texas Tech. Sure,
and I guess the flip side would be if Utah or BYU goes to the Big 12 championship game and beats Tech, a 1-loss Tech team and then a 1-loss BYU or Utah team, most likely to get in. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say.
Okay.
Now, mind you, so many different things can happen. But
sure.
That is. I think a couple of different teams. The Big Ten is very interesting to me because the Big Ten, Penn State's going in the tank. Michigan is underwhelming this year. Rebuilding, I think, is the complimentary way to put it. They don't have. There's one team that interests me out of the Big Ten that is just, I don't want to say lurking because they're a major program, but I think they're better than people think they are. USC. USC is just killing people. Efficient, strong, running the ball really well. They gutted Michigan with a walk-on named King Miller. Listen, BYU, if you want to know, like, gut-wise, you go, hey, man, is BYU a good football team? I'm like, their quarterback's named Bear Bachmeier, and he wears 47. There's something there, right? I don't even have to look at the roster. That guy. If you have a walk-on running back named King Miller, you have something there. There's charisma to that team instantly.
No, for sure. Since you're bringing up the Big Ten, there have been some reports that based off of where we live, based off of our geographic footprint, we're close to Oregon, we're close to California, that there is some support from schools in the Big Ten to potentially include Utah in that conference. And I know these things are complicated, but we all kind of read the tea leaves and understand that if you're not in the SEC and the Big Ten, you very much would like to be. Have you heard anything about the potential of the Big Ten looking at Utah?
I haven't, but theoretically, it's a pretty nice fit. It really is. Like, it's a much better fit than, say, in a 2 major conference world. It's a much better fit than the SEC. Utah is a large enough institution with high enough academic standards in a consistency in the football program and a commitment to the football program that I think it makes sense if they want to do it. Now, who knows what the Big Ten actually wants to do. They have a lot going on. If you don't know, they're mulling a private equity deal that you'll never guess. The schools that don't make as much money anyway are really into it. And the schools that are already wealthy are not so into it. So we'll see how that math works out for them and see if they all really do have equal votes. But Utah, to me, if that were a continued expansion of the Big Ten into kind of like one of the two major conferences, Utah could fit.
Penny, for your thoughts concerning the daily news cycle in Chapel Hill with Bill Belichick, where
Sure.
every day we seem to wake up to some new bizarre thing. Pablo Torre, who is on this generational run, gets video of Jordan Hudson basically directing the NFL Films people, I think is what I saw, with the Bill Belichick podcast, and she either thought she was in charge or was very much in charge, and this is just the latest. I mean, you know the list. How does this end? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Speaking of private equity deals, Mike Lombardi, the general manager, it was revealed on the Pablo Torre podcast that, he'd been in Saudi Arabia in August, just asking for money, checking to see if anyone wanted to give UNC money. Just bizarre stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they came into college football and assumed that they would be smarter and that would be enough. I think they just decided that they could take what they got, coach it up, scout better. Like the worst thing I've read about their attitude towards talent and talent scouting. Because remember, the problem in New England toward the end, it wasn't necessarily the coaching, it was the roster. They just didn't sign the right guys, and they just didn't scout that well. And there's a Bruce Feldman piece in The Athletic where a guy who is a group of five coach, so not a power four, right? A guy who is probably like at the JMU level, or the Sun Belt level. He said, I was getting beat for guys by North Carolina. And he said, well, I should get beat for guys by North Carolina. But at the same time, I shouldn't, because why are you trying to recruit the same guys I'm trying to recruit? I'm not trying to get a 4-star. I'm sometimes not trying to get 3 stars. But you're looking at my guys. What's wrong with you, right? Like that shouldn't be who they're picking. So it's baffling the number of people that they got out of the transfer portal that nobody was really looking at, and it's baffling the people they passed up. They passed up North Texas's quarterback, who Chandler Morris, who has had a fantastic year for a one-loss UVA team that has single-handedly probably saved Tony Elliott's job at UVA. They're really good, and he's a key part of it. UNC passed him up for Purdue's quarterback and then had to scramble and get Gio Lopez out of South Alabama. I'm just naming names. The point is, something in the apparatus determining who was good and who belonged on the roster was broken, and that probably starts at the top with Belichick and Lombardi. And that's not an assistant you can fire. That's your guy. The problem is at the top.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's wild how every day it just continues to snowball. Before I set you loose, life moves really fast. 3-4 weeks ago, James Franklin had a top 2 team in college football, and he had a 7-point lead over Oregon in overtime, and now he is unemployed. Surprised at all that Penn State went in this direction, and who ultimately do you think they land on?
I think it's Matt Rule. I think that makes all too much sense for Penn State. He's got conference experience. He's had good luck and a good record taking over college programs and building them in his own image. The challenge, and he's got connections to the program because he played there. So that's all pretty obvious. And also Nebraska, I think, has its own challenges that maybe it's time for, now that he's got that program kind of up and running, maybe it's time for him to take on a new challenge. This is the thing for me on Penn State, though, with Matt Rule. When has Matt Rule had to just, drive the Ferrari? Because Penn State, theoretically speaking, is one of the best 20 programs in the nation. Don't think that's true about Nebraska. Certainly don't think that's true about Temple or Baylor, his previous stops. Well, what's it like when he's the guy who doesn't necessarily have to, rip it down to the studs and rebuild it? because they're in a pretty good spot already. Good facilities, all the money they need, great commitment to the program, good recruiting profile. What do you do when you don't have to do that? I think the focus will be a little bit more on his skill as a, game manager, guy coaching day to day than it will be on like that program builder thing. So that's a wrinkle. I don't think that's certainly not a reason to avoid hiring him. I think he's very good at his job. It's just a slightly different situation than the ones he's had in the past.
Well, from one Spencer to another, I always appreciate your time. Going to be a great weekend full of a lot of great games and storylines, my man. So enjoy it, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, likewise. Enjoy it.
All right, Spencer Hall, one of my favorite college football guests. I always appreciate his time. You can find his college football newsletter, Channel 6, on his social media pages at EDSBS, which is an acronym for Every Day Should Be Saturday. I think we can all agree upon that. All right, we're live today. We'd love to see it. Beautiful day, man. Feels awesome for mid-fall. Hopefully this is a sign of great weather to come. A little bit down south tomorrow for the game. It is the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event. It is 5544 West, 2400 South. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, you got to check these things out. Think like G-Wagon, built for off-roading, yet you can use it pragmatically and practically for your everyday life. Go to WarnerIneosGrenadier.com and then come on out and take a test drive. They've got a taco truck. Tanner and I smashed some tacos earlier. We've got hats. We've got T-shirts we're giving away. We've got some candy and a pumpkin. What is going on? We've got some ESPN 700 and Utah tote bags that I'll hook you up with just for coming by and saying hello. They're going to go until 6 o'clock tonight. Then they'll reopen up tomorrow at 10 a.m., and they'll go to 3 p.m. So come on out, take a test drive, grab a hat, grab a T-shirt, grab some tacos, having a good time, and we'd love to meet you and shake your hand out here at the Global Ineos Grenadier Test Drive event. We will catch a quick break. More coming up on the other side of a Friday drive right here on ESPN 700. All right, we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program coming up in just a little bit. An entire hour allocated and dedicated to tomorrow's Holy War, even though some people do not want us to say that anymore. It is just about 24 hours away, about 25 hours and 20 minutes to be exact from Utah BYU. We'll take a little break right now to do a little golf with our guy Paul Pugmire on a Friday. Happy Friday, Paul. How are you, sir?
Doing great. I've been sitting here listening to you and Spencer Hall talk Holy War. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, he's the man. He's the man. Would you be so bold as to give us the Paul Pugmire prediction for tomorrow's match?
I want to talk about BYU and Utah golf. I want to talk about Utah golf. They are ranked number 1 in the country right now.
So that's a no. You will not give us your Holy War prediction.
I skipped that.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Utah women number 1 in the country. What do we need to know?
No, the Utah men. They're ranked number one in the country in the first national ranking on a service called Clipped Scoreboard, which is the standard that is used in college golf. And there are some reasons why Utah comes out number 1 in the country, and Gabriel Palacios of Utah is ranked number 1 individually. I don't think the ranking will hold as the college fall season progresses, but it says a lot that they are there right now.
So tell us, what should we know about this program? I mean, I know, BYU seems to get most of the attention for their golf program because a lot of BYU alums have gone on to do great things. What do we need to know about this Utah men's golf team?
It starts with the head coach, with Garrett Clegg, and Chris Hill will be remembered up at the University of Utah for keeping and retaining happy Kyle Whittingham. But I think the greatest thing that Chris Hill did while he was the AD up on the Hill was he hired Garrett Clegg to coach the golf program. It took it from basically being a mid-major, even though Utah's a big school. The program was acting like a mid-major program, and it took it into the upper echelons of golf. University of Utah has been to the national tournament 3 out of the last 4 years. They've been 4 out of the last 5 regional tournaments. They did something remarkable last year that I've never seen and don't expect ever to see again. In a 12-month period, they had all 5 of their starters win tournaments individually. That's unreasonable. You just don't see it. This is a team that has earned national attention, and then they came out of the blocks early this year with very high finishes in the first 2 tournaments that counted in the rankings, and there they are, number 1 in the country.
So tell me about this Gabriel Palacios kid. I mean, I'm just looking at his stuff right now. Junior, off to a roaring start. He's Guatemalan. He's from Guatemala, huh? Yeah. Tell us about this player.
Yeah, a Guatemalan kid who has some personal family connections into the U.S. He speaks beautiful English, better than me, and but he is from Guatemala. Played his junior golf in Guatemala, and he is just standing on the edge of being the real deal, somebody that you've got to look forward to in being able to carry his game into the professional sphere. He's got a lot of speed. He's got wonderfully soft hands. He putts great. There's not a hole in his game. And he has already made some noise in amateur international competition. He's a name to keep track of and pay attention to.
So I just have their schedule pulled up. The Williams Cup coming up in Chapel Hill. That's the next event for this team. Am I seeing that correctly? So what is that, a team event? Is that an individual event? What does that entail? What's the format?
Yeah, both. The way college golf works is there is always a concurrent team event and individual event going on at the same time. So the team event, the standard format that I'll just go with. There are some variations now and then, but standard format is you play 5, count 4 low scores each of 3 rounds in the tournament. And then while that's going on, the individual scores count individually as well, and it will produce an individual championship out of the tournament.
I see. So I'm learning this in real time because I don't have time really to cover golf at all, period, let alone college golf. Are we entering the busy part of the collegiate golf calendar now? Is that what the fall season manifests?
The fall season, you can think of it as preseason before getting into conference. Yeah,
okay.
It's analogously it correlates with a preseason to both basketball and football kind of a thing. And so golf in college plays both a fall season and a spring season. Things really get hot and heavy in the spring when they come back after the holiday break, starting in January for some schools. By February, everybody is engaged, and the fall season is kind of a foundational precursor to give people a chance to see where things might shake out in the spring.
Okay, let's see. Let's move over here to, do we have the field yet for the Bank of Utah? We do. Okay, so Black Desert Resort coming up in just about 6 days. Next week, the PGA Tour will roll into our state, and I'm trying to see this in real time as well. So highlights of the field that will be here next week at the Black Desert Resort.
First of all, there are five players who are in the FedEx Top 50 who have chosen to enter Black Desert. And it would be fascinating to know individually why each of them chose to do it, but they did. And I'm talking about Jason Day, a former major champion, a former world number 1, Kurt Kitayama, Maverick McNeely, who is really a fun player, and he is in the top 20 in the official world golf rankings as well. And then Tom Hoagie and Ryan Gerard. All 5 of them are in the top 50 of the FedEx Cup points system at the end of the regular FedEx Cup season. And so they don't really have any points need to come to this tournament. The fall series that we're in right now is designed to let people try to advance their standing. These guys just chose to come, and it might be because they've heard it's a very interesting course and beautiful, which it is. They might have heard because they might have come because they're hearing that they're treated really well by Black Desert, the host facility, and they are. And it might be because they need a rep to keep their game sharp. I don't know what it might be, but regardless, we have 5 of the top 50 in this tournament, a tournament designed for players from 50 to 125 on the points list. In addition to that, there are some names you know. You've got Max Homa, Billy Horschel, Francisco Molinari, Alex Noren, who is ranked number 17 on the official world golf rankings. One of my favorites, cannot wait to see this guy, Aldrich Potgieter. Aldrich Potgieter from South Africa. He is 52 in the FedEx Cup points, so his motivation is clear. He's trying to get his way into the top 50. But Potgieter is stupid long. He's got the highest club head speed on the PGA Tour. He hits it the farthest on the PGA Tour. And he'll be coming to what for them is elevation at 2,500 feet. And cannot wait to see Aldrich Potgieter blast it.
Yeah, that dude hits it a mile. I do know that. Hey, before we catch a break, last time you hopped on, we both were under the impression that there was a chance we were going to see Colin Morikawa. Any insight as to why that didn't ultimately go down?
No, I wish I did. I'll see what I can find out. I'll be heading down there this weekend and spending the week at Black Desert. I'm very curious to see what we can learn about that, both why he was looking and why he chose not to. But darn it, when I was able to look at the list when it came out about an hour ago, disappointing to see his name wasn't there.
What's coming up on the show tomorrow, Paul?
We're going to be talking with Garrett Clegg about the University of Utah #1 ranking. We're going to be talking with Patrick Manning from Black Desert about the field and about final last-minute preparations going into the Bank of Utah Championship. And we will touch base with the newly minted Utah Golf Association Player of the Year, Noah Schoen.
All right, Paul, thanks for the time. Be well. Have a good show tomorrow, okay?
Thank you. We'll see you.
Paul Pugmire, Utah Golf Radio. The Uinta Golf PGA update, latest deals on Titleist, Ping, TaylorMade, Callaway, and more. Go to uintagolf.com as the PGA Tour will be in our state coming up next week. We're live today at Warner Ineos Grenadier at 5544 West, 2400 South. Come on out and say hello. Take a test drive of one of these beautiful vehicles, ready to roll. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, do not buy anything until you've come and check these things out. You can take a test drive, giving away hats, T-shirts. They got a taco truck and more with our good friends at Ineos Grenadier. Check out their website, warnerineosgrenadier.com. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the program comes your way next right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Final segment of the program for the day and the week. So it is prediction time for Utah BYU. We've been teasing all week, and I know you guys have been waiting with bated breath for my prediction for Utah BYU. So we'll give you that before we say goodnight. I want to say a special thank you to our friends at Global Ineos Grenadier today. That's their test drive event, and it goes through tomorrow. So they're about to close up, but if you didn't make it today, you can make it tomorrow at 10 a.m. It goes until 3 p.m., and the address is 5544 West, 2400 South. These vehicles are really, really cool. Think like G-Wagons designed for off-roading and much more affordable. And if you take advantage of the deal, you'll get $2,000 in free accessories. They've also got a taco truck. Tacos were great. T-shirts, hats, a bunch of other stuff with our friends at Ineos Grenadier. All right, Porter, would you like to save your prediction for your pregame show tomorrow with Trevor?
Yeah, I'll at least maybe save my final score. I do I do think the Vegas line is fair. I'm going to go probably under. I just have a feeling that these are two of the top defenses in the country, and they're going to show as such on Saturday. But I think Kyle and co do have a little bit of an edge going in.
As we discussed earlier with Spencer Hall, this game is really hard to predict, so do not take this to the bank. But after a week of analyzing this, having some really smart football guests on, I am going your final score 27-23. And the Utes take it. So the Utes slightly cover the 3.5, and they slightly go over the 49.5 over-under. But it's going to be a fun one. Reminder, our pregame coverage begins tomorrow at 1 o'clock with Trevor, Riley, Porter, Larson. Kickoff 6 o'clock. Television coverage is, of course, Fox. And the radio coverage is right here on your home of the Utes with Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell, and Stevenson Sylvester. Porter, before we say goodnight, what comes our way on a Monday edition of the show?
Well, you mentioned Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell. We'll get the radio guys on the show. Kyle Whittingham's press conference from a Monday morning, and likely some folks that we see on site there at LaVell Edwards Stadium tomorrow.
Lovely. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you to Eric Weddle, Roxy Bernstein, Sam Bruckhouse, Spencer Hall, and Paul Pugmire. Great show today. For any of the sound you may miss, website ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app. Support our podcast page, please. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review. Say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. For Porter and Tanner, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. We'll talk to you on a Monday edition of the program. And as always, you can catch it right here on ESPN 700.